Welcome to this webinar today. My name is Bill Baker with Firestorm, and we're pleased to be on with this webinar for the Rochester Business Alliance. Today we're going to be discussing the virtual investigation. This is actually a follow-up on last month's subject, and our presenter today is going to continue to be Karen Mazzullo. We invite you to become our friend. Facebook, we're known as Firestorm Solutions. You can also follow us on Twitter, Firestorm Soul. There's a hashtag for the session. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. Please keep in mind the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and the work product provided must be read and considered in conjunction with your organization's personal counsel. In addition, this information should not be considered legal advice or legal opinion. We're glad to have Chip with us today. Chip is with the Rochester Business Alliance. Our presenter today is Karen Mazzullo. She's the Chief Intelligence Officer at Firestorm. Let me see if, I don't think that John has joined us yet. John is with the Association of Contingency Planners. So Karen, over to you and Chip, please.
Hi, Bill. I'm sorry. Just give me 1 minute. My computer decided not to forward slides. Chip, do you want to just say hi?
Sure, Karen. I'd be glad to say hi. That's one of the highlights of my day. Well, good morning to you and to all of our participants today. They say as time passes more quickly, you get older, or you get older. What is it? What did I say?
One of those.
They say that time passes more quickly as you get older. See, that's what happens. Therefore, I must be really old because this summer and this year are passing far more quickly than I'd like. Nevertheless, the speeding calendar does give me things to which I can look forward, such as our monthly chat with Jim Satterfield or one of his team. Today is such a day, and this is the 8th in the 2015 series of the Crisis Coach. The Rochester Business Alliance is pleased to continue our partnership with Firestorm and our friends at the Eastern Great Lakes Association of Contingency Planners to bring you, our members, this important 45-minute discussion by Karen, one of the country's top social media experts, at least in my opinion. Today, Karen will cover the virtual investigation. When I was employed by big industry, the investigation of nearly everything was through a face-to-face conversation, and a comprehensive picture took hours or days to compile. Today, the story in great detail sits on the web or in the phone company's servers. A close friend, who is a family law attorney, does much of his preparation for court on Facebook. It's amazing, he says, how often open people are to friends and family and total strangers about how they conduct themselves in their lives. There are no secrets. Think for a moment about how much of your business is conducted in personal emails. Do you or your employer really control the secrets of your organization? As a casual observer with no stake in the matter, I wonder how the mixing of personal and business emails is working out for Hillary Clinton. With the words top secret and FBI prominent in last evening's news, there must be great and continued gnashing of teeth today. What's leaking from your organization? Who knows your most critical secrets? Who can you trust? How do you find out? That's where Karen will be taking you in the next 40 minutes. Now, here's Karen.
Oh, thank you, Chip, as always. We appreciate our partnership and look forward to many years of continued success in the Crisis Coach series and helping your membership. Excuse me. Good morning, Rochester. I am fighting a little bit of a cold, so I appreciate and I apologize ahead of time if I sound a little bit hoarse. It's that time of year for me. All right, so here we go. Last week, we asked a question, and that question was, how do you know what you don't know? And last week, we learned some new things, and we learned a little bit, I hope, about what we didn't know, and now we know what we didn't know. And my computer is not behaving today. So today we're going to talk about, once you know, what do you do with it? What do you do with the information once you do actually know? Whatever that information may be. It may be a risk to your company. It may be a risk from an individual. We're going to look at a few different samples, and they may include both in the education environment and the business environment. As always, at Firestorm, we've identified 5 common failures in a crisis. The failure to control critical supply chains, the failure to train employees for both work and home, the failure to identify and monitor all threats and risks, the failure to conduct exercises and update your plans, and the failure to develop a crisis communications plan. So today, our subject actually involves a little bit of all of this, because while we're talking specifically about monitoring all threats and risks, on both sides of the equation, what do we do before, what do we do during, and what do we do after, the virtual investigation actually follows through all phases. So let's look at that just a little bit. Last week as well, we asked you if you currently use external intelligence to identify potential threats. And really 67% of you were in the either we don't or I just don't know if we do. And this is more than just using a Google alert to let us know when the name of the company or the brand has been mentioned. Because when threats come across, the threats that directly mention or attack your brand are easy to surface. I don't like the ABC company. I'm going to the ABC company to do something. Well, that's not generally how the threat evolves. What we've seen when threats evolve is very different and requires a level of investigation to narrow down and pinpoint both the individual, to put the individual's conversation into context, and then to geographically pinpoint where that individual is. This is one that we surfaced recently. So this is a warning that is triggered. So if Firestorm is working with a client, we create a query or multiple queries that, based on conversations with your team, your critical team members, we develop a profile, and based on your risk assessment, that allows us to understand what are the key risks and threats that could or may occur in your organization. The other thing we know is that there are those threats that may be unique to your culture, your company, your brand, your product, and your organization, and the way you do business. And then there are some other ones that sadly are always going to be a problem for every company. Workplace violence, drug and alcohol abuse, domestic abuse visited upon the company. And so when we look in a broad way for keywords that involve the query or that are in the query. And then we look geographically, and we may pinpoint your corporate headquarters, your business offices. If you have 245 locations around the United States and abroad, we may look at those individually and geographically as well. And we may see something like this surface. So this person says they're going to kill someone at work today. That's pretty clear. That's pretty upsetting to see. Next, what we have to do, however, is to put that into context so that we can move the investigation forward. So we looked back through the stream of this specific person's messaging so that we could give it some context. Was she making that threat because someone took the last cupcake? And even then, we still must take that seriously because you never know what someone's triggers may be. But we need to put the entire conversation in context. So are they just someone who's frustrated at work and they just want to post this message to let their followers know or their friends know that they're frustrated at work and they want someone to talk to them about it. Now, as we went through this person's stream, we also realized that the name of the company and where she works was highly visible throughout her stream. So within a couple of minutes, we were able to clearly identify where she worked, what location, and some of her coworkers. And there were pictures from inside of the retail establishment where she worked that showed some things that probably were inappropriate, not grossly inappropriate, but those things that maybe if the boss or the manager were on the premises would not have been occurring. The brand then, these are images that the brand might not want to have demonstrated, but we still don't know at this point if there's a real threat. So once you see something like this, whether it's Firestorm working with you or your internal team, where do you go and what do you do with the information? And this is more than just a Google alert. This is more than one alert coming through that lets you know, oh, there was a news story or somebody made a blog comment that mentioned your brand. By combining two different tools, Firestorm is looking at more than 36 different social and traditional media sites. We look at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We look at Kik, Yik Yak, a variety of broad message boards like Reddit, where some very interesting conversations surface. So we're not just looking at one thing, we're looking at the whole of it, YouTube, video, etc. So once we see this, how do we proceed forward? So we've got a warning sign or a trigger. We've looked a little bit more deeply at the person, and we feel that this is something that probably requires a conversation. Someone should sit down and either surface a challenge with this particular employee, resolve an issue, or in the pre-action phase, intercede so this issue or situation doesn't escalate. Even if it's only escalating on social media, our brand doesn't need this. So what is the process in your organization? Everyone on the call, I want you to think, if today you saw a specific threat on your organization or an individual who works in your organization, your CEO, someone on your leadership team, someone on your team, a person who works within the company, what would you do? What's your process? And do you have tools that support this process? Do you send an email to somebody? Is that email then saved and archived somewhere in case you need it later? A well-designed monitoring program and the tools that go with it have a built-in escalation workflow. When Firestorm sits down with a client to design a monitoring program, whether the company has 5 people or 50,000 people, we map out what the key recipients are, who the key recipients are, what their specific focus within the organization is, and then we add them to a workflow tree so that those of us working within the monitoring tools, and they may be only Firestorm, they may be only your team, or they may be your team in conjunction with Firestorm's guidance. So we have 3 different ways to do that. But we map out how that escalation happens, because the worst thing that can happen is that someone sees something, they want to say something, and they don't know who they should say it to. Or they say it to someone who, because they do not have an exact process to follow, either lets it go, lets it slide, or doesn't take the action that is required to assure that a crisis has been averted or intervened, or that some steps have been taken. My computer is just doing all kinds of things. And can we mute whatever phone that was? Thanks. Okay, so we know now that a well-designed program has a set of tools with it. And so this is an example of a well-mapped escalation workflow. This is for a small company, how I might escalate it. This is a critical component for the success of a program or investigation. The other thing, too, due diligence requires us to have the ability to archive and save these messages over a period of time. So our tools allow us at the end of the month to export all of this into an Excel spreadsheet once a month and keep all incoming, outgoing, escalation, alerts, all types of messages into one archive so that we can reference it again if we need to. In our tools, I'm able to quickly add a task. So if Chip Dawson were part of my team, or I added him to the team, or were a client and I wanted to escalate something to him, I could add him to the workflow and then assign a specific mention that I happen to see to him. In this case, I say this person is exhibiting public behaviors of concern. Please look into this and provide further context and report back to me. I then, through a task window, am able to see what I've assigned to someone, and once they have taken action or reassigned it or escalated it or moved it along the line, I'm able to see that as well. So I get a good, clear workflow, but it's been mapped out ahead of time, and that's where we can really assist you in your program, because when minutes matter, seconds really do count. Last week, if you were on the call, we talked about when I identified someone saying they were going to bring a gun into their school. And a gun in a school is a workplace, so we're talking about not only school violence, but workplace violence. And within a very short period of time, we were able to identify, get very specific about who the person was, where we believe the school was, even though it was an anonymous social media account. And as I mentioned at that time, I was a little disappointed because it took me about 30 minutes to narrow that down. Working with one of our partners in providing the tools that we use, we've gotten that down to about 6 minutes. And we're working on making that even more efficient because we know that when minutes matter, seconds count. Okay, now once a warning is triggered, really think through, right now, what is the protocol in your organization for reporting that observed threat or behavior of concern? Do you know? Now, you may know, but do your employees? If you have multiple locations, is that reporting consistent throughout all of your locations? Ask people randomly today, as you walk down the hall, as you leave your office, as you have lunch, if you saw something odd or something concerning on social media, what would you do with the information? And see how consistent the answers are, and that will help you move forward into the next step. Now, once you know what the threat is, does that report then go to, I don't know, a security team or a head of security? Does it go to HR? Does it depend on the type of the threat? So when we do an assessment for you and then start designing your program, we start looking at all those threats. Is it workplace bullying? Has someone exhibited anger toward their manager? Is there going to be a restructuring in the company, and there may be some layoffs or releases or reorganizations? Are there any threats that may go with that we need to be concerned about? Is there information regarding that type of a move that could impact our brand on social media? What will our response be? And how will we monitor those types of threats? When we identify one, where do those go? So we want to look at all of those different types of situations. And the last piece of this, which is most important, is has that process been tested? Now, we may have, again, folders on the bookshelves that we talk about that have beautiful plans and processes, but if people haven't been trained and tested on them, you don't know where the strength and the weaknesses are of your teams. And during a crisis is not the time to be learning. During the crisis is time for action. So we really want to make sure that once we've assessed the organization, created your plan, that we also test the process. Now, I'd like to invite everyone on this call at the end of the month. If you go to the Firestorm website under Learn on Demand, you will see we're having it's a mini virtual tabletop exercise at the end of this month. I believe the one for businesses is on the 26th. And there's no fee for that. It's about 2 hours. And it will run you through some scenarios that you can test with your teams. So if you have a couple of hours, you can get in a conference room. Please visit and register for that because I think it's going to be very interesting. It's being led by Jim Satterfield and a strong team, and I look forward to seeing you on that. I think it's going to be a good exercise. What we're looking at now are some different instances that I pulled from the news very recently, and all of these were actionable threats and have moved into a more serious phase. The middle one, you see, someone was talking about bringing a gun to school tomorrow with Mike Holmes. He kept talking about Mike Holmes will shoot every expletive at Emma Sampson tomorrow. So they actually were naming the school. Mike Holmes will invade Emma Sampson tomorrow with bombs. This was identified to be a credible threat. And at first, looking at this, you might say, how are they writing this? And this person took some time and some trouble to create it the way that they did. So we're able to surface this even if there are misspellings, different spellings. And we have one of the only tools that will also search emojis, and those are the little pictures. So if there's a picture of a schoolhouse and a picture of a gun, we would get an alert on that even though there were no text. Here's another one on the right-hand side. Someone just sent me a message and it said this, just wanted to pass it along, not looking for drama. Kids are going to die tomorrow and it goes on. Is that a joke? Is that a real threat? Well, as far as law enforcement is concerned, whether someone thought it was a quote, joke, unquote, this is an illegal activity, and it is a terroristic threat, and it carries heavy penalties. We have another one. A Cartersville City employee was accused of threatening to shoot a coworker. He was the database administrator, and it was over something that seemed minor. There was no initial intervention into early threats, and it turned into a very serious situation. Additionally, once they started to explore this database administrator's files, he handled all of the servers and many of the IT functions for the company. They found a significant amount of child pornography on their company's computers. So that opened up a whole new risk to them. And this was not a large company. It was relatively not a large division of the city. But no matter how large your organization is or how small, these are very real risks that you need to be aware of. So we can help you do that. It doesn't need to be a full-time job for you. I know many of you are sitting there and saying, oh my God, I don't have time to do what I do already. How am I going to have time to do this? And that's where we hope that we can help you. So when we look at a threat that we've identified, we have these stages of escalation that are pretty important in a crisis. And you've seen this before in other ways. Those of you that are contingency planners certainly have. And we're in the pre-action. area. We want to be there before the gun comes into your workplace, before something erupts that creates a loss of life or property or damage to your company. Once we are out of the pre-action phase, we're into onset. There is a crisis. There is a situation. Maybe threats are escalating. At that point in time, we need to make sure that we've been following it, escalating it, and trying to de-escalate as best we can so that we don't end up in the event phase where the emergency response plan must be activated. A crisis, we then see how we escalate from there, where the crisis is declared, your crisis plan is activated, your business continuity plan is activated, and we start moving into a much more complex area of managing the crisis. We were working with a client earlier this year, and we started to see an escalation happening in real time. What was going on, we weren't quite able to put it into context, but as it turned out, someone was at work. They needed to get a payment to the bursar's office, and it was a little bit complicated. But this person started out with, she was just angry. She was mad. She said, I'm like swallowing tears. That's how mad I am. I am so angry, and I just want her to stay out of my face. And then she started saying, I hate my boss today, and talking about the problems they were having, and I just need to leave before I do, or say something I can't take back. I just want her to stay out of my face. I just want to smack her. And then she said, I want to shoot my boss. That's a real issue. This is a fast 10-minute escalation of a real threat. Now, the people in the location at the time understand that the threat is going on. So the woman who may be the focus of this young woman's anger, she knows something is going on. The young woman who is getting this angry knows what's going on. Young Ron 28, who this person is posting to, knows something is going on. But does anyone else in the building? Does anyone else in the office? How is this escalated? Who do we let know immediately that something's going on and we need some intervention and for this to be taken care of? The application of our experience and your knowledge of your own company, your culture, and your people, in combination with those risks that we identify, provides what we call predictive and actionable intelligence that allows us to move forward the virtual investigation. When we look at behaviors of concern, we look at them both in the very literal sense, I'm going to bring a gun to work, to other more vague comments that we understand through the last 5 years of doing this may convey escalating anger, indifference, rage, and other problems that can significantly impact your organization. And those may be employees talking about things that are happening to them, being bullied, etc. Again, we want you to thoroughly understand, what do you do when there's a behavior or concern that you've seen, and where do we classify that? There's some normal discipline required in that. Do they get a write-up? Do they get a caution? Have you set up that meeting in a way that is by the book and respectful of both the law, the employee, and the manager involved? Then we start seeing threatening behaviors, the behaviors of concern, and that requires a different level of intervention. And then we have those high behaviors that may involve physical injury and death. And this is part of the behavioral risk assessment that we work with you to set up. The behavioral risk threat assessment, or we call this BRTHA, is intended to assist you when you're identifying, you're assessing, you're managing, and always monitoring those behaviors of concern. Even at the very early stages, we try to get in, we try to intervene. If something escalates during that whole escalation period, we're constantly monitoring through that as well, so that we can understand, are other people involved, are other locations involved, is this affecting your brand and your business, are customers talking about the situation? You know, recently there was a very sad situation ongoing with a Department of Children's Services employee who was shot and killed in an office parking lot by someone who had lost custody of their children. And you know, those are things in hindsight. We go back, we look at the person's Facebook page, and we say, oh yeah, here it is. It's really clear. They were, you know, talking about it for the last week. We need to get in before. So we're not the media that goes in after and looks for the story. We are trying to help every organization keep the crisis from happening beforehand. And everything must be looked at if it's public. We never look at anything that's private or locked down, and we do not invade people's privacy. But it is constantly amazing to me how much people do share in a social situation on the web. And every program has to be based on this established framework, overarching policies and procedures that specifically define the goals of your program and how they're going to be achieved. What we really want throughout this virtual investigation process is to provide you with awareness so that you understand what a threat really means, but also what constitutes behaviors of concern. You know, last year when there was a shooting in California at a variety of sororities, the young person who did that posted a number of videos, manifestos via video. I actually have those videos and have studied them. And there was clear indication in those cases. His parents tried to get him help. They tried to intervene in every way that they could. The threat was clear and it was pronounced. And sadly, in the area in which they were, there were challenges in order for them to intervene. So we work hard to make sure that we let you know ahead of time so that you can have policies, procedures in place so that it doesn't come onto your workplace. And if there is a threat of it coming onto your workplace, you're prepared. We really want to make sure that employees know what to report, when to report it, and give them many means for doing so. Is there an anonymous way to report? Do I send an email? Who do I send it to? We want to understand as well that behaviors and threats are not all equal. It's important that those people who are part of that escalation chain, who are charged with receiving the information, have a good systematic means of not only gathering the information, but then investigating and analyzing the seriousness. And that's where we can really help with our experience and certainly expertise. And then once you receive this report, once you know there's a credible threat, once there's something that we feel that it may escalate, then we have a process for the behavioral risk threat assessment plan to be activated. And part of it is ongoing virtual investigation, also non-virtual investigation, screening, there's an action plan, there's a monitoring plan that's consistent throughout the entire thing, and certainly record keeping. And, you know, as I mentioned, these behaviors are often expressed on social media, but they surface after an incident happened. And I think every single one of you on this call can think of an instance where we've seen something in the news and a couple of days later or hours later, or whatever the case may be, you'll see posts of these persons' Facebook page or Instagram where there were some pretty credible, clear threats against a person or organization. And you'll say to yourselves, why didn't somebody do something? Why didn't somebody say something? You know, I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and as those of you who were on the call last month know, the shooting at the AME church here was just a horrifying situation for my city. And people were saying, well, were there signs? Was there anything that could have been done? Well, there were a lot of signs, and actually 2 people were aware of this shooter's plans. They actually took his guns away from them and hid them for 24 hours. Have they just done something more? So this is a part of what we hope you take into your organization, that there has to be more that we do than just a sort of light-handed intervention. We want to look at early warning signs of behaviors of concern. Do you have someone who's socially withdrawing? Are they excessively expressing feelings of isolation? No one cares about me. No one loves me. Everyone's left me. Is someone experiencing PTSD? Were they themselves a victim of violence? Are they being bullied? Is someone creating a high-stress environment for them? Are they suddenly withdrawing from the workplace? Were they a high performer, maybe pleasant and social, and suddenly are withdrawing? Are there any patterns that are suddenly creating alerts that hadn't been there before? Excessive physical movements that may be occurring, a significant change in behavior, such as the person used to have lunch with everyone and now isolates themselves. Is there suspected drug and alcohol use in the workplace? So these are serious early warning signs that we need to look at. And then we're able to look more deeply at when those go to the next level, when they escalate to the next level. We also see on social media through a variety of streams that we use to monitor those risks that are very real for suicide and self-harm. And there are times when self-harm also creates harm to others. And these are just a couple of random ones that I was looking at. Someone saying, I'm done. I'm going to make a way to kill myself tonight. I don't care anymore. And these are pretty significant cries for help. I thought maybe I'd be prettier in the mirror with a gun to my head, and that one really got to me. That's a really tough one. So we help you look at those and then associate whether those are coming from internally in your organization. Are they coming from geographically your location? And we can help surface those. These threats then are grouped into categories, and my team and my team of analysts working with your team, we create the threat levels, whether it's low, it's a minimal threat to the risk, a minimal risk to the victim and public safety. Medium, something could be carried out, but it doesn't appear realistic. It just appears to be venting. Or very high. We feel there's an imminent and serious danger to the safety of others. When we found that school, the gun in school on the West Coast, we looked through the person's sphere of influence, other people, and 3 months of messaging within those 30 minutes, and we said, this is a real threat, and indeed it was. And so we work with these levels of threats and then decide who gets what escalated to them in your process. And that process is designed in a custom way for everyone. Here's a general look, but the process we create for you may be a little bit different. It may have some modifications. The incident or threat of concern is reported. We initiate a protective response if we know there's a target or imminent danger to others. That may include the intervention of law enforcement. There may be a lockdown, a lockout, or an evacuation. And all throughout this, we will be monitoring. You know, a few months ago, earlier in this year, there was someone who had left his work. He'd blown up. he'd taken a woman with him, and it was never clear if she was hostage or if she was a co-conspirator with him. He went back to his apartment, locked himself down, and had, like, I think it was a 9-hour standoff with police. He Facebook messaged throughout the entire thing, before and after. This was, there were hundreds of messages from him. He knew exactly where the police were, what they were doing. He had other people messaging him, telling them they're on your roof, they're outside your left window. This is a very different world that we're living in. The safety of police officers, the community, other people in that apartment building were significantly compromised. And it just shows you how quickly these things can escalate. So again, let's get there before they escalate so we don't have to go through this. Again, as I talked about, the investigation continues through all phases of the program. Now, it may change. When we originally started the query for you and your company, we may have used one specific set of keywords or phrases. As the situation evolves, we create a new stream or a new query that now includes this changing situation and changing names of persons of interest, people of interest, and targets of interest, so that we can give you a fuller and more broad picture. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not looking at the original stream where other threats may be occurring simultaneously. So we really want to make sure that you're covered in every way possible. The investigation sort of looks like this on paper. We have predictive intelligence at first, and we start with social and traditional media throughout the virtual investigation. And then how do we escalate that? Administration is called in to conduct an investigation that we may need to escalate from our investigation to a higher level. We bring your senior people in. We have incident reports. If there is a subject that's the focus of it, we need to document that and determine if that next level of behavioral risk screening is warranted. And this is just a good, solid action plan, simple plan. And all risk levels require that written action and monitoring plan. It be developed that's custom for you and for your organization. And it must include guarded risk levels, elevated risk levels, severe risk levels, and then that plan must be put into place. And this is an example of what that plan may look like. On the right-hand side, you can see who is responsible for what pieces in the plan and how things get escalated and how the company works together to predict, plan, and perform. I appreciate your time today, and what we'd like to do is for anyone on the call, we have created the ability for you to start a 90-day trial on monitoring for your organization at a significantly reduced price. And then at the end of that 90 days, if you'd like to continue, we'll go ahead and customize and modify it for your organization. But it's a very strong program, and my team stands at the ready to assist you. So you can give us a call at 800-321-2219. You can write webinars at firestorm.com, and I'll sit down with you individually and just demonstrate the actual tools and how we go about designing a program. And I'd be happy to speak with anyone on the call today regarding their interest or questions or how they might start a program in your own organization. I'd like to, as always, thank Chip Dawson and the Rochester Business Alliance and ACP. You can find us at firestorm.com, email at webinars@firestorm.com. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me directly at kmasulo@firestorm.com. Bill, I think that about wraps it up for today. Any other comments from our team on the phone?
Just a big thank you, Karen. Always sobering and thought-provoking to hear these presentations, and a little scary too. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you again to your members for joining, and I hope we've given some food for thought today, and that we can avoid something happening in your family or your organization or your community. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day, and this will conclude our session.